away.
The moment Muhammad died, what happened was earlier.
You had the Sunni-Shia split. You had the wars about the zakat. You had the wars of succession, right? Muhammad himself never actually said how he should be succeeded, right? So it was directly because of what Muhammad said and what Muhammad did that Islam failed, right?
I'm not talking about Islam as a religion.
Are you a Muslim yourself?
I'm an atheist.
You're an atheist.
So I'm talking about it in the sense of, is it really
So you
the
can, wait,
best?
I just want to be checked. So you can say with me, Muhammad is not a prophet of Allah.
I don't believe in gods.
So you can say Muhammad is not a prophet of Allah.
Well, if there is no God, there can't be a prophet.
So is Muhammad a prophet of Allah?
There is no Allah. I don't believe in him.
Okay, I just want to check because I get a lot of Muslims come here pretending to be
No, I'm an atheist.
right. And where are you from?
Egypt.
Okay, right. You a Christian family or Muslim family?
Muslim family.
Muslim family. All right, fair enough. I mean, it's funny because I might be talking about Egypt today and about the football teams, right? In terms of civilizations, right? We can see that there are failures in the Christian civilization. We can see that there's failures in the Islamic civilization, right? Because people are people, and people screw up everything.
Theology is theology. If
Right.
you follow theological
Well, that's my
method of
but
ruling,
that's my point. When what I'm suggesting, and you're the wrong person to try to defend this because you're not a Muslim yourself, is that when you follow Islam, you end up in problems. You end up with cousin marriages. You end up with child marriages. You end up. But
Also, it's the same as when you follow Christianity.
Right. Show me where that happens in Christianity, because I think that you're misunderstanding the dynamics between Christian faith and the church. So show me the same.
I look at history and I see the atrocities that used to happen in Europe, Spanish Inquisitions.
Let's talk about that one. Let's talk about the Spanish Inquisition. So the Spanish Inquisition, are you aware that the Spanish Inquisition never killed anyone?
Really, this is hard to believe.
Right.
They tortured people.
Yeah, yes, torture was something that was done in the Spanish Inquisition. That is absolutely true. Which means Muhammad is only good as a medieval Spanish Catholic, because Muhammad also tortured people.
I don't talk about Muhammad because I don't believe in him.
Right.
I don't believe in anything that
Right.
he says.
But in terms
now
of
we're examining.
so what
Christianity is
ideology
similar.
do you think we should be following?
Secularism.
Secularism.
It has worked in Europe.
Right.
It built the greatest civilization humanity has ever
Right.
known. The Western civilization was built upon the principles and values of secularism, not
Right.
Christianity.
You've totally misunderstood
Yeah.
how Western history developed.
Well,
Right. Secularism.
you had to mess up first.
No, hold
so
on
that
one
you
second.
can
Hold
realize
on.
that
Hold on
Christianity
one
doesn't
second.
work.
Hold on
Now
one
we need
second.
to
Hold on one
move to
second.
something
Hold on
that
one.
actually does
Hold on one
work.
second.
Right.
The Enlightenment and the French Revolution that occurred in France resulted in a genocide against the Vendée. Do you know who the Vendée are? So the Vendée were Catholics who rejected the French Revolution. Upwards of 60 to 70% of the Vendée were wiped out. Men, women, children. The secularism that you're saying is great and glorious and beautiful and advanced society is built literally upon the absolute annihilation of entire regions of France. Right? Did you know that?
Regardless of whether I knew it or not.
Okay, right. So my point is, brother, ignore this troll because he just trolls. Just focus on our conversation, right? I'm happy to let you talk, right? But my point to you is, I think you've got a couple of different misperceptions, and the first misperception that I want to address is this idea that secularism hasn't performed or created atrocities, because it has. Like the genocide against the Vendée. Like abortion. Abortion clinics are only possible in a liberal secular world.
I mean, it was a process of development.
Yes,
So,
correct,
well,
exactly.
You can't start perfect, but then you keep improving. That's the one thing about Western civilization that I highly
Yeah.
respect, is the ability to correct itself and put itself back on track. Right? No other civilization has ever done that. Only the Western civilization stops and said, "Whoa, we actually got that wrong. Let's change it and let's improve."
Yeah.
Right, and that happened when they stopped relying on church in making decisions and in examining nature around us and putting the laws.
Yeah.
So the moment they stopped doing that, everything started to grow exponentially.
Okay, so I would say to you that in terms of our technological development, things definitely have gone up on a curve like that when it comes to the technological abilities that the West has had, right? Undeniable. And you can trace that back to the Enlightenment. There's a move towards rationalism, there's a move towards empiricism. But what has happened in Western civilization is technology is far in advance of our ethics and far in advance of our morality, right? It was that same kind of technological advancement that allowed the Holocaust. It was the same kind of technological advancement that allowed abortions. And the reasons for that, the reasons why those things became possible, is because in modernity what we did is we rejected any connection to God, and we emphasized the idea that it's all about this world and it's all about life in our world. And I would say that the West has degenerated morally the more it's used up and abandoned its Christian resources.
I would disagree. When the West adopted Christianity, they were honestly savages. They kept killing each other all the time. Like, if you read the history, you see that they only a little tribe, they would attack the others, and then it was a total chaos. But the moment that they start to civilize a little bit and then move away from Christianity, and then things started to improve. Also, I don't think Christianity helped with colonialism. So it was still, we were gonna do missionary trips in Africa and in America and in Asia, and that ended atrociously.
Colonialism was an Enlightenment project, not a Christian project. That's the first thing.
Well, part of it was to spread Christianity.
It was an Enlightenment project, and its driving force was commerce and money and power and the pride of nations against one another, right? That's the driving force behind colonialism, not Christianity, right? You might be able to suggest that with the Spanish and the Portuguese, there was a bit more of a Christian influence, but there were also Christian critics. So, for example, Desideri Erasmus critiqued Spanish colonial endeavors in Latin America, saying that rather than sending out conquerors, we should be sending out missionaries, right? Now, in terms of the use of science itself, that developed out of and from a Christian milieu and a Christian worldview. The first natural philosophers that were exploring the natural world were doing so because they believed that by doing so, they were exploring the mind of God, that God was a lawgiver, and therefore he created the universe with laws that could be understood, written down, and experimented upon. So the whole the modern scientific project of the West was born out of a Christian culture and out of a Christian mindset. You're reading, and this is my last point, I'll let you reply. Your reading of and simplistic generalization of Christian history that when Christians when Europeans adopted Christianity, right, we were just savages. It's too simplistic. There's a whole. I know it's not true. It's really simplistic. How can you cover over 1,700 years of history, right? Sorry, 1,000. Let's call it 1,400 years of history. How can you cover that with a single sentence that it was just chaos and butchery? That shows you don't know anything about European history.
I mean, oftentimes you can make generalizations, then they would be to some extent true and correct and accurate.
Like Islam doesn't work.
That's your generalization, but
is it true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? So you can still make very vague generalizations, and they will still be accurate to some extent.
What is the internal logic of Christianity by which you measure its success?
If you trace everything back to a divine creator, and then everything can be traced back to someone who lives up in the sky.
Yeah.
Well, you can't sit down down here on Earth and then figure out what's the best way to resolve disputes.
Right.
If you can, everything that you're thinking has the answer from God.
Yeah.
But then when you sit together, and then you can have let's figure out what works, despite of what
that was
some imaginary entity has said.
That was an answer to a different question. The question that I asked you is what within the internal logic of Christianity is the measure by which it works? And saying I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Well, I'm not sure how I can word it, but what I'm saying is then if you believe in spirituality and divine entities, you can't have a logical conversation. You can't have an actual conversation that would resolve disputes, right?
Okay,
you trace everything back to holy books.
Yeah.
To
So you haven't actually answered my question, so let me answer it for you. I gave you two chances, right? And rather than just have the humility to say, well, actually, I don't know, you're just waffled, right? What decides whether Christianity works is about whether it brings people to salvation and whether it makes them saints, right? And by both of those measures, Christianity succeeds, right? Now, granted, the first one, bringing people to salvation, is not something that we can sort of observe in any empirical sense.
Exactly.
But in
So
terms of
but
in terms of the second one, Christianity most certainly does work. Like, if you look into Egyptian history, you're an Egyptian, that means you're a Copt. If you look at the Coptic Church, if you look at all their saints and all the people that they venerate as saints and honor as saints, the church in Egypt, despite hundreds of years of Islamic oppression, has continued to produce saints. Holy men, holy women, who have been known for the love with which they have conducted themselves in their communities. And it's the same in the Catholic Church. You look at, St. Teresa of Calcutta. Yeah, it's St. Teresa of Calcutta. Or countless other saints like William and Catherine Booth, whose feast day landed just the week that's just gone. They set up the Salvation Army, right? The point is, Christianity works because it brings people to salvation, which I accept we can't talk about in any empirical sense, but it makes people saints, i.e., it re-centers people's lives towards love and towards the idea of self-sacrifice and the idea of self-control. Right? And so that's how you know them, by their fruits.
Let's leave the theoretical argument or the theoretical debate on the side. And
no, this is an observable argument.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the empiricism of it, right? Does it objectively make nations better?
Yes.
If you make any correlation between the East European nations, South American nations, they're still the most religious, and yet they're the poorest, they're the most failures. And you look at the most secular nations, England, Germany, America, Canada, Australia, they're the most secular and they're the most successful. Can you see any correlation between these two?
Yeah, and the correlation that you're missing is the correlation of communism. That's the correlation that you're missing. The reason why Eastern Europe is behind Western Europe is because they lived under 70 years of the ravages of communism. The reason why Latin America is not further forward is because they keep swapping between the ravages of uncontrolled, unmitigated capitalism pushed upon them by America and Stalinist communism pushed upon them by revolutionaries from Russia, from Cuba, from China. Like, that's the reason why these two countries are behind the curve. Like, if you look at the Islamic world, once they ran out of other people's cash to plunder, their economies collapsed. Because Islam works on jizya, zakat, and plunder. And when you run out of jizya and you run out of plunder, when you can't plunder and you run out of jizya, zakat doesn't cover the bills, right? The thing about Christianity, one of the reasons why Britain introduced the welfare state was because of the influence of Christian saints like William Temple, the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time in the 1940s, who argued for the establishment of a welfare system to fight against the evils of poverty, right? So, in Jesus' own teachings, and then I'm going to finish and let you reply, in Jesus' own teaching, he describes the saints as the yeast that leavens the whole. That happens within the church because the saints lift up the church, and it also happens by the church to society as the church lifts up society. Our concern for the poor in the West, education of women in the West, right? the equal dignity of all human beings is precisely because of Christian teaching, not despite it.
I will have to disagree.
Based on what?
Just because it came from Christian authors doesn't mean that it was based on Christian values. So the liberal world that we live in the West right now was put forth by John Locke. And
not just him.
Despite
Not just him.
Hallowed be his name.
But yeah, he put the basics, right? The fundamentals. The right to liberty, property, and freedom. The life, liberty, and property. They were the basic pillars upon which the civilization was built.
Yeah.
But despite him being a Christian, but I wouldn't say that these are particularly Christian values.
Right, so let's look at John Locke, right? Because you can trace a line out from John Locke's understanding of freedom right through to the transgender movement and the LGBT fanaticism that we've got today dominating the West, right? Because when you keep saying it's all about the individual, it's all about the individual, it's all about the individual, the idea that the individual should be free, free from religion, free to pursue his own happiness, free to make his own economic choices. Because, for instance, that pursuit of happiness was not in John Locke's words. You're confusing that with the American founders, the writing of the American Constitution, who was a deist. It wasn't John Locke that said the pursuit of happiness. That's from America.
Yeah.
That's American liberalism. That's Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
It's Thomas Jefferson. But this idea of hyper-individualism is exactly what is killing the West right now. And once again, Christianity has the cure. It's the idea of this, the body of Christ, the people of God, this idea that you're not just solely an individual, but you're part of a wider community, right? Individualism is the rot killing the West.
I would have to disagree.
So I'll let you reply and then I'll come back with another argument. Go on.
I mean, if you look at all communities worldwide, they adapt what you're advocating for. No individualistic societies other than the West, almost, right? And you can see that the West is the most successful. So I wouldn't say the individualism is what it's bringing the West down. Actually, the West moving away from the values upon which it has thrived is what can bring the West down.
Right. So let me advance my argument further, because you said we should choose secularism, and by your entire argument, I'm guessing you mean European styles of secularism, like that found in France, that found in America,
Liberalism.
those two, yeah. Right. I'm guessing by everything that you've just said that you're as equally opposed to Islamization as I am.
Probably more, because I experienced it.
Yes. Great, and I fully appreciate that you've probably seen it up close and first hand. A lot of liberals in the West haven't. They live in fantasy world. They think that Islamization is harmless. It's just a cultural shift. Let me land. Secularization in France and America and in the UK have completely failed to stop Islamization. And the reason is because if you create a sort of individualized society where it's all about your individual contractual rights and responsibilities with the state, then the state can't look and go, actually, we spot a pattern of behavior amongst this demographic of people. These Muslims have a high percentage of people who want to impose their religious laws on others, because to observe that and to tackle that is anti-liberal, which means that the liberals just let it happen, like it is happening in Dearborn, Michigan in America, like it is happening in the suburbs of France, in Paris, like it is happening in Bradford, England, like it is happening in Tower Hamlets in London. If you're against Islamization, you need to be against secularism. But I'll give you an alternative: Christian nationalism. The idea that the state recognizes that it has a Christian identity and seeks to proactively defend that Christian identity. That will still allow you, as an atheist, to get on with your life so long as you're not harming other people, right?
Well,
but it will
but
deal
never
with the
ends
Islamists who want to impose Sharia law upon you and me.
Well, you can stop them from imposing this, but
Except-
you can. I believe in a modern society, in a civilized society, you should allow everybody to think the way they want. You shouldn't necessarily allow them to act the way that they want.
Right. So in terms of where the Christian perspective is, right? A Christian nationalist perspective is that people are going to be free to have their thoughts regardless, right? But
Does that include the Muslims, the Islamists?
I mean, we're on the same page. It's how we get there, and I'm saying to you that you have no liberal way to stop Islamists. Because, for instance, let's look at Bradford. The majority, a significant proportion of Bradford, I'm not quite sure of the proportions, are Muslims. They live in concentrated areas, and in our first past the post system, they're electing Muslim politicians who then control. And this is a liberal response. Oh my goodness, oh, we shouldn't talk about this. And that's exactly why Islamization is progressing in the West. Now, a better example would be Tower Hamlets, actually. In Tower Hamlets, it's a corrupt part of the state that is dominated by people that are pushing Islamist ideology in the UK. And the state is doing nothing because they can't go, oh, you're doing that because you're Muslim. They can't, because that's not a liberal thing to do.
Well, my idea not to block a certain ideology, because I believe in the right of
Did you say your idea is not to block a certain ideology?
It's
Right.
not to block certain
And that's why
but-
liberalism fails.
because this is the fundamentals of liberalism, of secularism,
Yes.
of the modern Western civilization.
So how do you propose to, as a genuine liberal, how do you propose to stop Islamization?
By advertising and not advertising as in advertising, and promoting the ideas of secularism, and you can do that through legitimate means,
Like France does.
not through force, right? Not by forcing people to change,
Yeah.
by providing the means that would allow them to change their ideas.
Right, so allow me to address that, because your approach is exactly the approach of the French Republic. Your approach is exactly the approach of the United States of America. They both promote the ideas of liberalism, both the left and the right.
It works fine.
No, it doesn't.
It does work in
doesn't.
America.
It does not work. It does not work in Dearborn, Michigan. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking to people
Yeah, the most
in
successful
America.
nation in the history
Listen
of
to me.
humanity.
I am talking to people in America who are experiencing Islamization in Dearborn, Michigan. Christians are being harassed. Christians are being bullied. Like, those who are opposed to the Islamization of Dearborn, Michigan, are being told by state officials who are Muslim that they should leave the area. Go to France, you got Muslim gangs, Islamists, running around with guns in towns.
Shooting mothers. who are pregnant.
Michigan and America and the Republic of France have used your exact approach, and it does not work. Here's a better way. We need to start using the law to uphold a strong Christian culture. That means things like banning the Adhan and its amplification through mega speakers.
Well,
it means, let me
that's a
finish. Let me
secular
finish.
idea.
It means banning. No, it's a Christian idea. It means banning. No, I'm sorry, you don't get to claim ideas like
He
that.
has all the ideas.
You know, a Christian and a secularist can both arrive at the same conclusion from different places. Do you recognize that? So if wait 1 second. So if I and you arrive at the same conclusion, it doesn't mean that I have adopted a secular idea. Do you understand that?
So if the bill of a church,
I haven't
is too
even
loud,
finished. I was
if it's
trying
too
to
loud,
finish.
Would you also
You're
advocate
letting
for the
him
ban?
prompt you, right?
Finish, man.
Don't let him
I'm
prompt you.
distracted by him, to be honest.
I know. He's just a troll. He comes here every Sunday and he trolls me, right?
He comes here with a very serious point.
So, you do things like you ban the Adhan, you ban halal meat, you ban child circumcision.
This is Jesus.
Okay,
We're not a Christian nation.
you tackle the Muslim gangs operating in our prison system. You arrest, you prosecute, and you deal harshly with all Islamists in the country. We got about 40,000 under our liberal secular state.
I would support this only if it serves a legitimate means, if it serves a legitimate
We have a
goal.
Jesus
But
identity.
serve a legitimate purpose, yes. But then it should also be utilized the same way when dealing with Christian traditions that also doesn't achieve the greatest good to the greatest
Right.
number.
Now notice.
But a Christian identity
Yeah.
would only impose these things when it comes to any other religion other than Christianity.
Right.
My idea is, yes, you should do this, but on everyone.
Right. Now, hold on one second, because I've been present to this entire conversation, because I'm not as distracted by him. I get it, more used to it than you, right? But when I asked you what was your idea to stop Islamization, you never used any of these ideas. Now I've come up with these ideas and you realise that they're a lot better than your ideas, suddenly you're trying to claim my ideas as if you said them. You rewind this camera, what you said is let's educate people. Let's push the ideas of secularism. That's what you said. No, I haven't finished. There is no authentically liberal way that you can oppose Islamization. Why? Because a true liberal says that religion is a private matter, your religion is a private thing, right? And that you just have a contract of responsibilities and rights. And if you pursue your rights legally, then we've got nothing to say about it. Which means that if Islamists, like the Muslim Brotherhood, and as an Egyptian you should know all about this, penetrates the state as they did in Egypt, as they are doing in the United Kingdom, as they are doing in France, as they are doing in Germany, as they are doing in the USA, when Islamists penetrate the state using normal legal routes, the liberal state has nothing to stop them, as we have seen in America, in the UK, in Germany, and in France, where we have Islamists in our parliament right now, pushing Sharia law in our parliament right now.
I mean, in my opinion, history record says that you cannot really defeat an idea by force.
Correct.
People have tried, and it just doesn't work.
I agree.
So if you want to fight racism, you should not arrest those who advocate for racism. Yes, I believe that people should be free to say whatever they think.
Right.
Even if it was evil, even if it was bad.
Yeah.
But maybe through promoting good education, through promoting good government schemes, then you can fight these ideas without reason, force, or oppression.
Right. So my idea as a Christian nationalist is that the state should take up the identity of being Christian and should seek to defend that identity against shift, drift and rot that moves us away from our Christian identity. Now that will leave people like you, who are not trying to change a Christian society, unharassed. But it means that we have a reason to deal with Islamists. In Egypt, they deal with Islamists, but they deal with it because you've got powerful people wanting to hold on to power, right?
Did it work? No, it didn't work. The people themselves are
well, actually,
the
yes.
Ideology itself is still
was the Brotherhood overthrown?
Yes, but the idea is still there. Yes, you overthrew the party, but the people and the ideas is still in the society.
You know, the thing that will set Egypt free is when you return to your Christian roots. That's what will free Egypt. You are a colonized society by Arabs, and you don't even know that you're Africans. You don't even know that you're rooted to the Nile. You don't even know that you're the sons of Pharaoh. You don't even know that you were the center of Christendom.
I would love to see a secular Egypt, definitely, for sure. And also, I would love the West to stay secular as it is.
Because secularism isn't working in the UK.
It has worked.
It isn't working.
It's the 5th largest economy in the world, so clearly works.
No, but that brings me to another point, is your only measure of success is finances and technological development. Are you aware that secularism has led to demographic collapse across Western Europe? All the countries that are most secular have the deepest dive in their population. Germany, Italy, the UK, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, France, their populations are collapsing. It is not possible to say that the West is succeeding when the West is literally dying and withering on the vine. Literally dying.
In what sense is it dying?
I've just said, I literally just,
No.
I'll say it again because you didn't listen. I pointed out to you that your only measure of success was economic and technological advancement. You've added one more, influence. But what you're ignorant of is that Western populations are collapsing. English people are dying out. German people are dying out. Swedish people are dying out. French people are dying out. Italian people are dying out. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because of individual liberty and the idea of individual choice, we have come up with an idea in the West that a woman has the right to terminate and murder her own children, and we abort more children in England than are born in England. Last year, the British government released a stat showing demographic changes. It accounted for migration, both legal and illegal, birth rates and death rates, and did the calculation. Do you know how many people were added to the British population when you took away migration and when you did the deductions between births and deaths? Do you know how many people were added to by natural birth? Less than 15,000. Does that sound like a healthy society to you?
Well, if everyone in the society believes in the same values and the society lives coherently together, I don't see any problem with that. Regardless of
so you're saying that so you're saying it is a sign of a healthy society that you only have 15,000 children when you're a population of 80 million.
These kind of things happen. They happen everywhere. They happen in Japan, South Korea, and
secular.
I mean,
thank you.
That's not.
Yeah,
the point.
Japan is secular. South Korea is secular. Everywhere where liberal secularism dominates, societies start to die. North Korea is on the bridge of extinction. Sorry, no, not North. South Korea is on the bridge of extinction. Japan is on the bridge of extinction. Right?
India is not on the bridge of extinction.
And what?
Would you like
Wait
to be
one
like
second.
India?
And what has happened? And what has let's.
No, wealth matters, advancement matters, influence matters. All these things matter more than population.
Right. If you have no population, you can't claim to have succeeded. If you don't have children, you can't claim to succeed.
Only 15 million.
Right.
They have the most influence. They have the most wealth. They have everything.
Now let's.
They're the most successful minority probably in history.
Now let's look at. Let's use Japan as another example to prove my point. Because of the demographic collapse in Japan, they've just started to import migrant workers. A lot of them are coming from the Muslim world. And what has started happening in Japan quite recently is ancient Shinto and Buddhist temples that have stood for centuries are suddenly spontaneously catching fire. What's happening in France? A country that has imported migrants from a lot from the Muslim world, where, as you well know, Christophobia, anti-Christian prejudice is rampant. What started happening in France? Churches that have been fireproof for centuries have suddenly started catching fire. What's happened in New York, where the Muslim population has increased in New York, partly because of migration? Suddenly, churches that have stood for centuries, and in centuries in American terms, that's not really much, it's like one, have suddenly started catching fire. What's happening in Canada, a country that's imported large numbers of Muslims with Christophobic prejudice? Suddenly, churches that have not caught fire for centuries have suddenly started catching fire. Are you seeing a problem? Yes, exactly, and that's why and that is why you do not know about the failures of liberalism, because liberalism is failing the West.
So you said that you are not an advocate of individual rights. That's what you said.
No, I did not say that.
The women have the right to choose what they want to do.
I did not say that.
You said that.
No, I did not.
Women have the right to choose whether they want to keep the baby or not.
What I said was, no, go. I'll let you finish and then I'll reply.
That can. I mean, once this started happening, there is nothing to stop it. Now, well, maybe it will turn to an Afghanistan, a Christian Afghanistan.
Right.
If this Christian identity were to come back.
Let me explain why.
Slowly crawl back to the Middle Ages. Things are going to go back to the
Let me explain why Christianity doesn't lead to Afghanistan. There's a story in the Gospels. I don't know if you're aware of it, where Mary and Martha receive our Lord into their home. And I always get these two mixed up, so forgive me if I get them mixed up, because I do this all the time with names. But one of the sisters sits at the feet of Jesus and starts to learn from him, and the other sister starts tidying up the house and preparing the house for the guest, right? And the sister that's doing all the housework complains to the sister that's learning from Jesus and says, Lord, she's letting me do all the housework. And Jesus turns around to her and says this. He says, your sister has chosen the better part. In other words, Jesus, by those words, sanctifies female education. Wherever Christianity spread, women started getting educated, and that started happening 2,000 years ago, and it has continued ever since. Ever since.
Only 70 years ago, women were not allowed to study. You know?
Yes, because of the Enlightenment.
Yeah, that was in England.
Because of the Enlightenment.
The Enlightenment.
Yes, it was because of the Enlightenment.
So
I'll tell you exactly the reason why. Because if you look at the rationale and the people that were advocating against women's education, they were saying that women were not rational. And because they were not rational creatures, they didn't belong in universities. But Christians were teaching women to read in convents 1,000 years ago, 800 years ago, 600 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago, and also 70 years ago. Women in convents were receiving the equivalent of higher degrees of education in theology when women were banned by liberals from secular universities.
Okay.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Let me ask you this question. What in a society that has returned to its Christian identity would look like in your view? What would disappear from today's society? How would that be different from what we live today, now?
Right. Here's ways that it would begin to look different. Talking in the British context. Yeah?
Women will have to cover, yeah? Modesty again, and...
so I'm going to talk about it. Yeah.
And then...
Can I finish?
And you will ban...
You've asked a question and you're not even letting me answer.
You will ban individual rights. What else will you ban?
Right. Firstly, let's just deal with your characterization. None of those words spilled out of my mouth, right? That says more about how you're thinking than about how I'm thinking.
Okay, let me know. Yeah, that's why I asked you. So.
Well, exactly. You've asked a question, so let me answer it. Don't start asking a question and then patronizingly start to answer your own question. That's not a dialogue. That's just you showboating.
I'm listening.
Right. So here's some of the things that would change. Abortion would be made illegal. Right? Do you agree that killing little babies is wrong?
Well, up until a certain term, I mean, like
right. Are you aware in this country they've made it illegal to abort the baby even up to birth? That's liberalism for you. That's liberal secularism for you. In this country, it is illegal, as the baby is in the birth canal, before it is born, to stab its skull with a hoover and suck out all of its brains, and you haven't committed a crime.
Well,
that's liberal secularism for you.
In which you stop, right?
Not in Britain. In Britain, it is illegal to murder a baby the day before its due date. It's legal to murder a baby as it is being born. It could be there just before the vagina, just before its head crowns, and you can insert a needle into its skull, spin it around, and you haven't committed any crime at all in the UK.
We live in a democracy. We live in a liberal democracy.
Is that, there you go, we live in a liberal democracy. Liberal democracy did that.
For a change. Yeah,
right.
For a change.
So allow me to talk about what would be made. No, that's wrong again. But let me answer your first question before I address that one, because you're wrong a second time. We're not Muslims. You're confusing Christianity with Islam. Islam has the Sunnah. The Sunnah can't change. Christianity doesn't do that. We are quite happy with the idea of innovation. Innovation...
So you can go against what the Bible says sometimes.
No, that is not what we mean by that. No.
Okay.
No, that is not what we mean by that. Again, what you're
So
doing.
it would not be compatible.
What
with
you
modern
no,
society.
what you're doing, you're clutching
what was
at
written
straws.
2,000 years ago cannot be compatible.
You're
with the modern
clutching
society
at
today.
straws because you're out of your depth and you don't understand what you're talking about. You're trying to attack Christianity as if it is Islam, which shows that you don't appreciate Christianity for what Christianity is, right? And you would do better in this conversation if you recognize, just like any other liberal should recognize, that not all religions are the same, right? Thank you, ijtihad, thank you, right? So now, in terms of Christian faith, things that would change if we became a Christian nationalist country. 1, abortion would be made illegal. 2, no-fault divorce would be ended. 3,
You think that's a good thing?
yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
Go on. Yeah.
3, right? I'll name some things that would be against and some things that we'd be for, right? So I've named 2 things that we're against. 2, 3, we'd support foster agencies and adoption, right?
That's a good thing. Yeah.
We'd support the family in the tax system. The family is defined as a male and a female and their children and their bloodline and whoever they adopt, right? Is that a good thing, right? The state would support the evangelization of the nation, right? So it would support the missionary work of Christians, right? It wouldn't force anyone to be a Christian, but it would support Christians to evangelize the nation.
What if the majority of the people don't want to be in?
Then they would not be forced to.
But that, I mean, in a democratic society, that would lead to the change of the state, how the state is run.
Right, thank you. But now
Do you believe
right,
in
go on.
democracy?
Right, right. But now, Habibi, you've given me the argument, because what you've admitted, in a liberal democracy, society should be allowed to change.
Yes.
So what happens if in that liberal democracy it decides to change into an Islamic republic?
That would be the will of the people.
There you go. Liberalism can't stop Islamization. Thank you. Thank you for admitting
yes,
that.
It can. Yes, it can.
How?
Because it
How?
allows
If
for
the society democratically chooses to change into an Islamic republic, how does a liberal stop that?
Because, like I said, you can oppress ideas by force, and that has failed dramatically throughout history. By allowing a liberal society, you'd also allow for the freedom of thought. Freedom of thought would lead to most of the time to better outcomes and to better ways of thinking. And
Well, clearly not in the West, because we're a society that's withering on the vine. We're not having children. We shuttle off our elderly into homes. We don't take care of them. That's another thing that
that's
would
an
change.
individual
Hold on one
choice.
second.
That's the natural-
Hold on one second. Here's another thing that would change. You would have a legal responsibility to care for your parents. Is that a good thing? Because right now, there is no legal responsibility on any individual to look after their parents in their old age.
Because there is a solid welfare system, which is something that I support. So there is a really good welfare system in this country.
So you
Even if you're old-
think that a good society is one where a child can choose to leave their elderly parents in their elderly plight?
If
You
the
think
state-
that's moral progress?
if the state can-
That's a good society.
the state can look after the elderly people.
The state can never replace the family, ever.
I'm saying the state should not uphold morality. The state should uphold law.
Right.
Right.
Here's another problem with your thinking, right? Here's another thing that would change in a Christian state. The basic unit of society in a Christian national state would be the family unit. In a liberal state, it's the individual. The reason why everything in the West is going topsy-turvy, going bankrupt, is because as families deteriorate, the economic, social and cultural capacity of the family is not being replaced, and the state is having to pick up the bill. That is why we are having to look after our elderly in homes, and we've got this thing called bed blockers in the NHS, right? Which is part of the reason why our NHS is on its knees. And it's because of the breakdown of the family. Because without that family unit, the state has to pick up the bill, and the state can't afford to replace all the families in the country.
Why is it the job of the state to promote morality, to promote family? It's not the job of the state. The job of the state is to regularize the relationship between the individual
Yep.
and the government,
Yep.
and to regularize the relationship between its citizens.
Right, and
But
that
it's not a job. It's not its job
Yep.
to promote certain morality, to push certain ideology. In a state such as yours, what would you do with people who are of the same sex and you want to get married? How would you deal with that?
Right. So I'll answer.
Pressing them,
I'll answer that question, but then I want to address what you just said. Okay?
Okay.
So to directly answer your question, the definition of marriage in a Christian state is between one man and one woman. Right? That is the only definition of marriage that we accept. Any other definition doesn't count, and so two homosexuals cannot get legally married in a Christian state. Right? So that's directly to answer your question. Now let me address what you said. Because you just said that it is not the job of the state to push morality. But the point is, this is the myth that liberals tell themselves. The myth is that there is something called moral neutrality. There is no such thing as moral neutrality. It does not exist. Jesus said, you're either for me or you're against me. You're either gathering in or you're scattering abroad. Jesus doesn't believe in moral neutrality. That's the invention of liberals. But the problem is, if you say that as a society we're going to promote the idea of individualism, you have immediately promoted a moral system. Because the moment you say that we're going to organize society according to individual freedom, you have said that freedom is a moral virtue and that individuality is a moral virtue.
Within this
so
freedom,
it's not morally neutral.
Because within this freedom, you can still have the right of assembly. You can still have a community of your own. That still would be your own choice, but it wouldn't be forced and promoted by the state. The state should stay neutral to all its citizens. This is a perfect state. This is the ideal state.
In a Christian society, you can still have communities of your own. When the Christians liberated the Middle East, right? When we occupied during the Crusades the Middle East, and we freed all those Christians from Islamic occupation, the Crusader state still had a population that was 30% Muslim, right? When Christians liberated whole swathes of Europe and Asia and Anatolia, there were still Muslim populations. They weren't exterminated, they were allowed to exist, right? So it is, your assumption is, and this is where you're going wrong, your assumption is that if it is not liberal secular individualism, then it must be a monopoly of tyrannical rule. And those
we have a track record that this system
in Egypt, yes,
everywhere in the world.
In Egypt,
whenever theology comes to power, this is what ends up happening.
No, wrong. This is why you don't know English history. Tell me, you're obviously Egyptian. Are you a British passport carrier?
Not yet.
Right, you're wanting to be, aren't you?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Can I advise you that since you're deciding that you want to make your home in my land, that you owe it to me to know my history.
I'm studying the English history.
Let's be clear. In the 12th century, tyrants, there was a definitive movement in this country negotiated by the church and led by a peasants' revolt against the king, Richard II, that led to a document called the Magna Carta.
Yeah, I know
Go to Lincoln and go and see the Magna Carta. It placed limits on the king. And that was a Christian revolt inspired by Christian concepts, Christian justice, Christian culture, negotiated by the Christian church with a Christian king that limited his power over his subjects. So don't turn to me as someone who wants to come and live in my land and try to tell me my history when you don't know the first thing about it.
Just because you're from this land doesn't make your argument any better, right? Like if I have a better argument.
Agreed. But go on. If I am wrong historically, explain to me where I am wrong.
So the point
with my historical example.
Like that was really unnecessary. I don't know why. Maybe you did it for a show off, but that is irrelevant to the argument. It will not make any
You're making statements about European history and you don't know European history. I'd be surprised if you even know Egyptian history, because in Egypt they don't even they don't even teach you about the Christian history of Egypt?
I studied this
It's
independently.
glossed over.
But
Am I telling the truth? Is it true that in national education it's glossed over 7 centuries
Very
of
briefly,
Christian?
yeah.
Very briefly. Is it also true that in Egypt Christians are oppressed?
No.
So now you're going to lie about Egypt. So let's talk about what's going on in Egypt.
I would say atheists are oppressed, such as myself.
But not Christians.
No, they live normally. I mean,
So Christians don't suffer anti-Christian pogroms in Egypt.
in some rural parts of Egypt, but not in the
Christian girls don't get kidnapped in Egypt.
very few instances, but
So-
not that common.
So Christians can become the president of Egypt.
No.
Thank you. Right?
Yeah.
So can an atheist become the president of Egypt? Right? Right?
Definitely not. You wouldn't even make it
Is
allowed.
that oppression of an atheist because they can't become the president of Egypt?
Yes.
So why is it an oppression of Christians when they can't become the president of
Yes, I
Egypt?
understand.
Oh, hold on, but you just said Christians are not oppressed in Egypt, but when I gave the example of the presidency, you said it would be oppression if it applied to an
there are levels
atheist,
of things.
but not an oppression if it applied. Can I
there are
just say to you?
degrees of things. I would say Muslims in this country have more rights than Christians in Egypt. I would say that.
They do, definitely. They do,
Well,
definitely.
But the standards are different. I mean, this country should be held to much higher standards.
I
than
think,
Egypt, right?
I think that if you aren't able to recognize the oppression of Christians in Egypt, then our country would be better off without you in it. And we should deport you and send you back to Egypt.
Deport me?
Yes. Because
Look,
if you're not willing,
okay.
if you're not willing to speak up against Islamist oppressions,
this is
hold on one
exact-
second.
okay, whoa,
no,
whoa,
let me
wait.
explain my
I'm not
logic.
gonna let that
Let me
go, yeah?
no, that's fine.
This
You
is
can reply.
exactly
You can reply.
the tyrannical,
But this is my
theological
logic.
idea.
Let me explain my
If you
logic.
don't if you
Let
don't
me
agree with
explain my logic.
Then you're demonized.
Because
you should be deported.
because this is
exactly
let me
the
explain
problem with
why
what
you
say.
should be deported from my country. This is why you should be
Because I
deported.
disagree with you.
Because if you are not willing to stand up
Because
against,
because I've
if
had
you
different
are not
opinion
willing
than
to
you,
stand
how
up
is that
against
different? How is that
discrimination
different than dictatorship?
against Christians in
How is
Egypt,
that- how is
you
that-
will not stand up against discrimination of Christians in the UK.
I stand
You
up
are a
against discrimination against
danger.
I'm
You
a
are a
danger.
danger
I'm a danger.
to our
No,
society
okay.
because you are not able to accept that Christians are oppressed
I
in
believe
Egypt.
in the values
And
of
that
this
means
community.
you will defend
I believe in the
oppression
values
of
this
Christians
nation.
in this
I believe
country.
in the values that make this nation great, which you don't believe in because you said just because I have a
Can
different
Christians
idea.
repair their churches in
No, no, no,
Egypt
no.
without
Let's
a
not criticize
presidential
it. You
decree?
said-
Answer that question.
No, forget about this. You
No,
said
we're not
that I
forgetting about it.
deserve to be
We're going to
deported from
talk.
this
Yes, you
country
do.
because
Our
I
country
have
would be
an
better
opinion.
off without you in it.
Because I have an opinion that is different than yours.
Right. I'll explain my logic to you again.
You know that the UK is a signatory of the European Convention of
I don't
Human
care
Rights,
about that.
Right?
I don't
Which
care about
guarantees
that.
the freedom of speech.
I don't
right?
care about that.
You don't believe in this freedom
I
of
don't
speech.
care about
means
that.
you're
We
anti-British.
need
You
a
don't believe- you
migration
don't believe in the
policy
laws of this
that is
country.
to the benefit
You
of
don't-
the people
you
of this
don't- okay,
country,
but you don't believe-
and a person that
don't believe
does
in the
not
values. You
recognize
don't believe in
the
the values of
oppression
this
of
country.
Christians in Egypt will not
to me, listen to
recognize
me.
the oppression of Christians in the UK.
So you-
Let me ask you this
So I
question.
would say- I would
Let me ask
argue
you this
that
question.
I
Do
believe in
you
the-
support
You're not
Hamas?
listening to me.
Do you support Hamas and Hezbollah in their fight against Israel?
No, I don't
Right.
support either side.
Okay, you don't support either side.
But
Let me ask you this question.
I'm not going to let you off the hook. With
No,
what you
I'm
said.
not trying to get off the hook.
Okay.
I stand by my opinion.
You said because I have an opinion that is different than yours. Then I
A
just
dangerous
deported,
opinion that
right?
will lead to
I
the
deserve to be
oppression of
deported.
Christians. Yes.
Deported.
Yes. Because people
live in
in
a
this
country
country
that is signatory
that should make a
to the
choice
ECHR,
about which kind of
Article 8,
people
which-
we have
listen
in
to
this
me,
country.
listen to me, listen to me.
And if you are going to
I'm not gonna
whitewash
do this.
the persecution of Christians in Egypt, and I will not let you get away with that,
I will not let you
then
get
we
away.
don't need you in this country.
Okay.
We don't want you in this country.
who you decide.
Leave.
It's not-
Go back to Egypt.
not who you
And
decide.
when you
Go back to
learn,
Egypt. It's not
God
you who
willing,
decide.
it will be.
It's not who
God
you
willing,
decide.
it will be.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly my image of a
Answer this
tyrannical-
question.
Tyrannical, theological lunatic.
Answer this question.
No, why are you
In
asking
Egypt,
No,
in
one,
Egypt,
please.
in Egypt, can Christians repair their churches without permission from the government?
Even the mosque.
I have no idea
Even the
about this.
mosque.
I'll tell you what the actual answer is. They can't. They can't.
Okay.
Muslims
forget about this for now.
Muslims in
I'll
Egypt
forget about this for now.
will build a
I'm just gonna let
mosque
everybody know what
next
you
to
just
a
said.
church
What you said.
because you can't, when a church is being built, to stop the
said-
construction of churches in Egypt.
Wait.
Christian villages, towns and communities
You wait.
suffer anti-Christian pogroms in Egypt, and this man has the audacity to lie and to say that Christians are not being oppressed in Egypt.
I lived in
You
Egypt.
are lying,
lived
and
in
your
Egypt.
lies
I lived in
are
Egypt.
dangerous, and they are dangerous to Christians in this country.
I will not reply to this part. I will reply to the part.
No,
that
I want
said-
you to reply to that
said
point.
That I need to be deported.
Yes, I want you deported.
It's not who you decide.
I want you
We live in a civil
deported.
society.
I am voting to have you deported.
we live in a-
Argument. You've lost your argument.
I haven't. I really haven't. I really haven't. I really haven't. I really haven't.
We don't live in a tribe
You
anymore.
couldn't even
I don't
explain
know
why
if
I've
you know
lost.
this, but we don't live in a tribe. We don't live in the Middle Ages anymore. It's
So
not you
why
who
are you
decides.
ignoring the
This is-
plight of Christians?
Okay,
Let me
I'm not gonna
explain my
let you
logic.
off the hook.
Let me
Because what
explain
you
my
said
logic.
is really offensive.
No, I don't care if it
I am
offends you.
someone who lives
What
in
you
this country.
said offends
I
me.
choose-
You said Christians were not persecuted in Egypt.
about this.
No, not forget
So
about
you
it.
want to deport
Let's
me.
not forget about how
will
you
not let you
tried
off
to
the hook.
whitewash
I'm not-
about
I'm
the
not- I'm not gonna let you off the
persecution
hook.
of Christians
I'm
in
not gonna let you
Egypt,
off the hook.
and I'm not going to let you off the hook. Because Christians have their churches attacked in Egypt. Christians,
kind of states
do you
that
know
you
how
want.
many Christians
No.
played
If you're gonna
for the
shout about it,
national football
If you're not
team
listen.
of Egypt? Do you know how many? Less, 2 in the last 30 years.
We're-
2. Do you know why?
Let's stay in the-
Because the
Are you gonna just
discrimination
keep
against
interrupting me?
Christians
Are you
is
gonna keep
such.
interrupting me?
Do you want to do it timed?
Yes.
Right.
Let's do it.
Could we do it timed? Is anyone willing to time? How many minutes do you want?
1 minute.
1 minute, 1 minute. Okay, we're going to do 1 minute, 1 minute.
Sir, I'm going. Please, I'm sick. Take my question.
Sorry, I'm talking to him.
But you ask
Would
him
you like to go
leave.
first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just whenever you're ready.
On his first word.
Drink.
So there are a few things that I wanted to address here. I didn't say that Christians are not oppressed in Egypt. I just said they live normally, just like everyone else. Most of the Egyptian people, regardless of their religion, don't have full rights. They don't have the right to practice their religion or freedom of speech or to do anything for that matter. So it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, you still don't have most of the rights.
Even for Muslim.
Now, even if you're Muslim, you still don't have most of the rights. You still don't have the right to free speech. Now, you said that I need to be deported from
No,
this
no,
country because I had a different opinion
I
than
want to
yours.
add something,
Which means,
and this one
one
more
second,
respectable
one
than
second,
Muslim.
please. 1 second, please. So you said that I need to be deported because I have an opinion that is different than yours, which is truly un-British. Because this country is a signatory of the European Convention of Human Rights, which guarantees the right to freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Article 9 and Article 10. If you don't believe in these
that time?
constitutional rights, then you don't believe in the British values.
Time. Right. This man is trying to tell us all that Christians are not being persecuted in Egypt. I'm reading from an article about the experience of Christian footballers in Egypt. So, after years of playing with a local team, Zachary thought he'd struck gold when he was about to sign to join Guna Club. I was sitting in a meeting with the club coach, Ismail Yusuf, to sign my contract. 25-year-old Christian Zachary recounts. I presented my ID card to complete the contract, and Yusuf saw my name, and he was surprised to learn that my name was Ramon, is my real name and not a nickname. He returned my ID and left the room. The contractor attended the meeting, told me later that Yusuf doesn't like to work with Christians. Ladies and gentlemen, in other words, Christians are being discriminated in Egypt. Now let me explain in my next minute why we shouldn't allow people like this to settle in our country.
By who? By
So,
authority
I
of
never,
people.
I never claim that Christians are not being persecuted in Egypt. Well, in Egypt, we don't have individual rights to begin with. So it doesn't matter if you're gay, Christian, atheist. If you belong to anything other than majority, you will be persecuted. It's not targeting Christian communities. Christian, just like any other community, any other minority. Sometimes they don't get the same treatment as everybody else. But it's not because they're Christians, but because the Egyptian society is not an accepting, liberal society like we are in the West here. That's why. Now, We had a conversation about the kind of state that we would live in if we returned to the Christian nationalism of this country, which I believe would be a horrible thing. And you just have expressed that. You said that you would deport me because you don't believe in the basic values of liberal democracy. You say that you want to deport me. We don't live in a tribe anymore, mate. We live in a civilized, liberal community.
Time. So here's why people like this man should be deported. Just as we should deport every single migrant who supports Hamas and Hezbollah, because if they support terrorism abroad, they will support terrorism here. And that's exactly what we've seen with Palestine Action. And for those of you that are listening late to this debate, the brother is trying to subtly change his position. He's gone from saying Christians were not persecuted to I didn't say Christians were not persecuted, but the camera will show he flat out denied it. Is it also true that in Egypt Christians are oppressed?
No.
Now I want to be clear. If he can stand there and admit and condemn that Christians are persecuted in Egypt, then I would be more sympathetic to him coming to this country. But if he is going to be an apologist for the persecution of Christians in Egypt, then he should not be welcome.
This country is not yours.
Go on.
You occupied the whole world.
1 second, please. 1 second.
And he hasn't collected.
Again and again and again, I mentioned that
talking about?
I didn't
You have to
say.
leave this
Well, 1
country.
second, please, because you're wasting my minute. Can you start over, please?
But why you keep asking to leave?
Can you please stop?
You've just got to ignore them.
2, 1.
Again and again, I'm repeating that I said that Christians are persecuted not because they're Christians, but because Egypt is not an accepting liberal society. So they're not persecuted on the fact that they're Christians. It's just anyone would be persecuted who's not at the majority. I am being persecuted, but I mean, Christians have more rights than me, than someone who doesn't believe in God, who is from a Muslim family, who grew up as Muslim. I would be subject to more persecution than a Christian who lives among us, and people accept him. Yes, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. And it can't be like the West, because I believe in the Western values, which you don't believe in, because you said that I should be deported. You wouldn't say that to a German citizen. You would not say this to a Polish citizen.
I would.
You would say this only to someone who has the same skin color as me. I don't know what you're in about.
True.
But it has really nothing to do, because having a different opinion, no matter what that was, should not be a ground for you. Okay, go ahead.
Time. So just to be clear, if a Polish or a German migrant denied the persecution of Christians in Egypt, I would say they should be deported as well. It's got nothing to do with the colour of the skin. It's got to do with the values that the migrants bring to our land. And we have the right, as the people that live here, to decide who gets to stay here. And one of the assessments, not the only assessment, but one of the assessment should be their political views, their moral values, their religious outlook. Every Islamist should be barred from migrating to the UK, and anyone of any ethnicity who denies the persecution of Christians abroad should be barred from migrating here. Why? Because if they are willing to ignore the persecution of Christians abroad, they will ignore the persecution of Christians in the UK.
Right.
Well, it doesn't look like he's listening to anything I'm saying. I said once and again that I didn't deny the persecution of Christians, but he has a certain rhetoric that he just wants to say, regardless of anything I'm saying. Because you have a racist ideology. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No. Because if we're having a logical conversation, he would respond to what I say. But this is racial profiling. What? Can you stop, please? It's a racial profiling. Wait, please.
You've just got to ignore them.
It's a racial profiling. Because I am of a certain skin color, you're saying that I should have. That I would not be defending the Christians. I defend the minorities everywhere. I defended the minorities in Egypt. I defended the gay rights, women rights, Christian rights, atheist rights, everywhere, even in Western East, in the middle of persecution. And you're saying that you would deport me. You are not withholding the British values and the basic human rights that this country believes in.
Right. You know someone's lost the argument when they play the race card. It's an instant lose. Because everyone in this park, and notice he's ignoring what I said. Because I said if a Pole or a German migrant said what he said, they should be deported as well. It was based upon his values and his beliefs, not on the colour of his skin. I would welcome the Christians of Egypt who are fleeing persecution under the Islamic regime, and let us be clear, they are being persecuted because they are Christian. And I'll point out the hypocrisy of this man. When I talked about the presidential position and said Christians can't become the president of Egypt, he said that that wasn't persecution. But then when I replaced Christian with atheist, he said that that would be persecution. And that's exactly why our country does not need these kinds of migrants. We need migrants who will agree with our culture, customs and beliefs.
This is truly un-British. You want someone who is identical to your set of thinking and set of beliefs. This is un-British. The British culture, the British community, which is one that I believe in. That's why I left my country and I came here. Not because I believe in it. I believe in the values that this country promotes. That's why I abandoned everything. I am not a hypocrite. Otherwise, I wouldn't come to a country that don't believe in the values of, which you don't believe in these values. You are not. You don't believe in the diversity of thoughts. You believe in one set of thought because you believe in national identity, in Christian identity, which is an oppressive, tyrannical identity, because what you said that we the people choose. It's not individuals who choose, it's the state who chooses. And the state legislates laws, and these laws apply. It's not you don't get to directly choose what you want to do with others. We don't live in we're not savages anymore, I'm afraid.
Time.
Okay, so let's be clear, in a democracy we precisely do get to choose. And the problem with our society in Britain today is that we have given up on our choice about who comes to settle in our country. And that is exactly why migration is such a big debate, because we have bound ourselves to international laws that prevent us from testing whether illegal migrants have ever broken the law in the first place. And that's exactly why we are seeing problems in our culture. We need to take a control of mass migration, both legally and illegally, and one of the filters, not the only filter, should be what values is the potential migrant bringing to our country. Notice that I never said anything about you being deported until you denied the persecution of Christians, and you did deny it, and I've corrected you multiple times, but you're deaf.
So you rightly mentioned that people get to choose in a democracy, which is correct. Well, we live in one where you don't get directly to decide to deport me. There's a due process that you need to follow.
Correct.
There are rules.
And I wouldn't deny you those.
Because the people choose this. And I believe and respect in the will of the people who choose these rules, because the British community is the most successful community that humanity has ever known. You don't believe in their choice. They chose that nobody can arbitrarily deport someone unless they follow a due process. The people chose that, but you don't believe in the choice of the people. That's one thing. A second thing is you don't believe in the basic value that this country upholds, which is freedom of speech. Despite the fact that I didn't say that the Christians were not utterly not persecuted, that's not something I said. And I mentioned several times, you still believe that just because I have a different opinion than yours, I should be subject to punishment.
So, should we prevent migrants based upon their opinions? Yes. If a migrant comes to this country and they're an Islamist, but they haven't broken any law, they should not be allowed to gain citizenship. That means I'm advocating that people should be denied their migration right to come here based upon their opinions. There's no problem with that. I don't think anyone with a sensible mind would object to that idea. But if you agree with that, why can't we also apply it to maybe people who support terrorists abroad, or who whitewash the persecution of Christians because they are Christian, as you have attempted to do again and again and again in this debate, even lying to the people, because we have you on camera saying that Christians were not persecuted, but they are. Then you changed your position, and now it's they're not persecuted because they're Christian, but they are. Okay, because when someone blows up a cathedral...
You're done. So again, you don't believe in democracy, again, because this country chose the politicians that chose to opt in the Human Rights Act and in the European Convention of Human Rights, which guarantees the freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and there's no law that prevents someone from gaining citizenship if they have a certain opinion, unless this opinion is inciting or if it's affiliated with terrorism. Even if I denied that Christians were not persecuted, which I have not done.
Which you did.
Which I have not done.
It's on camera.
That cannot be a ground for me be prevented from citizenship. You wouldn't say that to a German far right. Right? That's also a dangerous ideology. You wouldn't say that to Italian fascist. You would only say it to someone from a country that is underprivileged. And that says a lot about you. You would not, I am pretty sure you've never have said that. You can't filter people on the basis of their ideology. People have different ideas. You can't strip the citizenship of a British person.
I don't think you know him that well.
Right. So let me just point something out. Yeah. A few years back, I can't remember how many years ago, there was a church in Egypt that was bombed. 13, 20, 30 odd people died. Maybe he remembers it. Maybe he was too young to remember it. I don't know. It won't take us long to find it. But let's be clear, they were targeted because they were Christians. And he's denying that they were targeted because they were Christians. He's saying that they are just persecuted because everybody's persecuted in Egypt. So here's a question. When was the last time a bomb went off in Egypt outside of a mosque? Huh? It never happens, but it happens regularly to Christian churches. When was the last time that there was an anti-Muslim pogrom in Egypt? It never happens, but it's happened multiple times in Egypt.
Okay, this time again. I don't know how many times I should say it. I don't know if is it my accent that you don't understand? Is it that my English is not that great and you're having trouble understanding what I'm saying? I said several times, I don't deny that persecution of Christians doesn't happen in Egypt. I just said it's not up to that same level that you'd imagine. Christians of Egypt still have a normal day-to-day life. Persecution does happen, as racism sometimes happens in this country. It's not to the point where people can't live, but they can experience every once in a while, which is exactly the same in Egypt. Minorities in Egypt get discriminated against, regardless of what these are. Why you can't discriminate against Muslims because they are the majority. How can you discriminate against the majority? So that's a natural consequence. Discrimination happens in everyone. Homosexuals can't live normally. People who are secular or atheists can't live normally as well. It's not only about Christians. It's just a country that doesn't have tolerance and acceptance of diversity of ideas as this country does. Which this country believes in values that you don't uphold.
Go. Right, let's be clear. I want to address a point that he made. Yeah. I would stop a neo-Nazi from Germany migrating to the UK. I would stop a fascist from Italy migrating to the UK. There we go. It's on record. Yeah. I've corrected him yet again. But I understand why he's thinking the way that he thinks. He doesn't know me. He doesn't understand my ideology. So he's sticking me in the only box that he has, which is you must be a racist because you think that I don't have the right to migrate here. But the point is, we have the right to choose who migrates here. And people who are denying the persecution of Christians in Egypt, who are from Egypt, because they are Christian are not going to bring good values to our country. If he would go back on that idea and admit that Christians are persecuted in Egypt for being Christian, I will retract my statement about the need to deport him and say that it should be judged on other measures.
Again, as you rightly said, you have the right to choose who comes to the country, which you did because you voted to politicians that set out the immigration rules.
Yes, vote restore.
Which I have fully committed to and I have fully met. Right. So in a way, yes, you, the people of Britain, chose. And I met these conditions. I'm paying my taxes, I'm paying the INHS, I paid all the application fees, I met the English language test, I met every single requirement. And yet, because I have a different ideas of yours, which I don't think it's that fundamental, you're advocating for my deportation, which cannot be traced to anything other than the fact that you don't like people different than you. This is a Christian national state would look like. Tyrannical, oppressive, and controlling state, and that would lead to the failure of this great nation, which you don't believe in any value that this country holds. Go on.
Okay, right. Yeah. So hey, let me expose the other lie. He said that Christians in Egypt have normal lives. Let me just tell you the reality of Christians in Egypt. They are essentially the dustbin men of Egypt because they can't advance economically. They are oppressed economically in Egypt. The vast majority of them live in squalor. They live as essentially the lowest of the low, like the street sweepers of Pakistan. And what do the Pakistani Christians and the Egyptian Christians have in common? They are both Christian minorities in a Muslim majority, and that is why they are oppressed. Another lie, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I'm going to invite him, if he retracts his statement that Christians are not persecuted because they are Christian, I will retract my statement about the need to deport you.
This man,
Do you want to do it? Do you want to take that deal?
That decision is not yours. The decision is not yours.
So in other words, no, no.
We live in a
Christians are not persecuted in Egypt
Can you
because
give me
they're
time?
Christians. No, don't start it because he interrupted me.
Again, you don't get to decide. We live in a civil society, a civilized society, where the individuals and the public don't get to choose and make judgments. We have a judicial system, we have a legal system, we have a due process that we need to follow. So
I wouldn't
people
deny
like
you any of those.
Yes, you did. Because
No, I wouldn't deny you any of those.
People like you should be deported. Why? Because I have a different opinion than you.
Correct.
The law of this country guarantees me to have a different opinion. It gives me the right to have a different opinion. The Human Convention of Human Rights, Article 9 and 10, gives me the right to say and express the way I want, right of assembly, right of religion, and right of freedom of speech. I don't know if you believe in any of these things, but I do. That's why I chose to come to this country. I'm not a hypocrite. I don't live in a country that I don't believe in the values of. I don't believe in the values of Egypt. I left Egypt. If you don't believe in the values of this country, leave this country. Go somewhere else, as I left my country. But you're being disingenuous, and you keep distracting the public from the fact that I said I don't deny the fact that Christians are persecuted.
Time.
I said that.
Time.
So,
You have a
Time.
to go back to.
Time.
He hasn't.
So let's be clear. I don't care about any of those international treaties. We should pull out of all of them. We should rip them all up.
doesn't believe in
No,
British law.
notice he's interrupting.
Doesn't believe in
Also, I want to correct
believe-
him.
leave-
Those are not British values. British values are Christian values, and Christian values are that Christians stand in solidarity with one another. That means when the Christians in Pakistan are being persecuted, I stand with them. When the Christians of India are being persecuted, I stand with them. When the Christians of Egypt are being persecuted, I stand with them. And if you don't want to live by British values, you should not migrate to this country. If you will not stand with persecuted Christians in Egypt, then you need to be deported. We don't need you in this country. British values are not the civic national values of the government.
So you said you don't care about international treaties, which is formed the constitution. So you don't believe in the constitution of this country. It's not codified, but it's a collection of all the treaties and the case law and everything. So you don't believe in the constitution of this country. You don't believe in the human rights that this country believes in. Why are you here? I have the dignity to leave my country because I don't believe in the values that it holds. My country doesn't have human rights, protection of minorities. I left. I have dignity. I have integrity. You clearly don't have it. You don't believe in the laws of this country that protects minority, that protects freedom of speech, that protects human rights. Back to the point when you said that Christians are the lowest of the lowest. That is objectively untrue. 5 or 6 of the top 10 richest people in Egypt are Christians. The only three billionaires in Africa are all Christian Egyptians. Again, I'm not denying that there's no persecution. I'm just saying that this persecution is generalized. This persecution is generalized. It's to every minority.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know about what's really happening to Christians in Egypt, go and look up the Christian charity Copts in Need. Go and look up Christian charities that support persecuted Christians in Egypt. The multimillionaires that he talked about made their millions outside of Egypt. Outside of Egypt, ladies and gentlemen. Christians in Egypt cannot evangelize without being harassed in Egyptian society. All I'm asking him to do is recognize that they are being persecuted because they are Christian. And what he demonstrates is that you can take the Muslim out of Islam, but you can't take the Islam out of the Muslim. Because at the end of the day, he does not want to admit that Christians are persecuted because they are Christian. So why is that a concern for me here? Why? Because he won't admit it that it happens there, he wonon't admit that it happens here.
I don't know what you're doing. Is that a straw man or a ad hominem? Probably all of them all at once. Because you don't care about anything I'm saying, you just keep going with the rhetoric that you have. It's a monologue at this point. You don't respond to anything I'm saying, you just keep going with what you have to say. Has everybody heard what I said? That I acknowledge and I recognize that there is persecution happening in Egypt to Christians. How is that not clear? Can everybody hear that?
After being challenged.
Then why does he come again and say that I never said? I'm saying again and again, I'm not going to repeat this point again. Persecution in Egypt for Christians does happen, but it does happen to everyone, to atheists, to homosexuals, to everyone who's a minority. Because again, we don't have laws and regulations to protect minorities. Thankfully, I live in a country that does. But you don't believe in these treaties, you don't believe in any international treaties, which is part of the Constitution.
Time.
Can you say that you don't uphold the British values or not? Yes or no?
Point.
Go. So no, I do not uphold British liberal values. Because these values were invented by a bunch of liberals who have no connection to the Christian heritage and culture and history of this land. So why am I here, he says? Why don't I migrate like he did? I'll tell you why. Because I'm fighting for my country. Like he should fight for Egypt, ladies and gentlemen. But I will offer him again a point of compromise between his position and my position. I am willing to retract now the statement, deport you, if you can admit on camera Christians are being persecuted in Egypt because they are Christian. If you say that, then your values are compatible with real British values, because real British values are Christian values, and Christian values are solidarity in the church, by the church, with the church.
I'm not standing before the immigration tribunal. You don't decide whether I get deported or not. Thankfully,
well, duh.
We don't live in a tribe. We live in a civilized.
Shall we bring it to a close?
Society.
Let's bring it to a close.
Because
It's been going a long
in
time.
circles for this time.
Right, it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your stay. Take care.
Anyway, final words.
So, guys, we started off the debating about whether liberal secularism or Christian nationalism is the way that we should organize our country. And I hopefully demonstrated to the brother that liberal secularism fails in multiple different ways. Fails to prevent Islamization, it fails to prevent the degeneration of a society, it even prevents to stop demographic collapse. But Christianity
Saves the nation.
does save the nation, as it did in Georgia,
secular country,
where
not Mexico.
a nation, because of its Christian heritage, has booked the collapsing population trend, as it is doing in Poland, as it is doing in Hungary, as it is slowly reversing it in Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, liberal secularism is killing the West. Christian nationalism is an alternative direction, and as the host nation, we get to choose who lives in our land, and we should discriminate who gets to live in our land, not based on the colour of their skin or what country they come from, but including things like what skills they bring, what job opportunities we need to fill, but also what beliefs they are bringing and what values they are bringing, and we should measure them according to historical British values, and historical British values are Christian values, and solidarity with the church is one of those values. And if you're denying that Christians are being persecuted in Egypt, you are denying a British value. Thank you.
I'm more compatible with the British values than you are, clearly.
Anyway, have a good day, bro. Honestly, don't mean you any ill will.
Well, you threatened me with deportation.
I can't threaten you with deportation.
Yes, that's what you
I
said.
think I've explained my position. We should have a society that it decides who migrates here based upon what values and what beliefs they bring with them. Would you object to
We
me?
live in one.
Would you object to me saying that members of the Muslim Brotherhood should not migrate here?
I agree on that.
Right. So you're agreeing with the principle
Because I
that we
believe
should
in freedom-
discriminate
freedom-
based upon values and ideas.
No, because the freedom, I believe in freedom of speech and expression, not freedom of actions. Muslim Brotherhood are taking action into implementing their ideas. But if it's mere thoughts, I believe everybody should be allowed to think that what they think. You don't believe in that, and you said that you should be able to decide.
Correct?
What you should allow. Yes, you have done that. We live in a society that allows people like me who have different opinions than yours to live in this country.
Yes.
So in a way, that is working.
So you're agreeing with me on the principle. You're just upset about the application because I apply it broader than you would.
Yeah.
We both agree that we should stop Muslim brotherhoods from Egypt migrating to the UK because of their beliefs and their values.
Not because of
You're
their-
upset
because of
because
their
I'm
actions.
applying the same principle
their
to you. And you denied, in your actions, you denied the persecution of Christians
That's-
in
is
Egypt
that a thought or is that
because
an
they were
action?
Christian.
If that were to be true,
That is a
that a thought?
dangerous, un-British value.
Is that a thought or is that an action?
It's an un-British value, and we get to decide that people. I
Yes,
think
we
we
did.
should allow
We
people
did.
to
That's
come
why
to this
I
country
complied
when
with all
they
the
share
conditions.
British values. You
I
do
agree.
not share a British
I agree.
value.
You clearly don't. You don't agree on the Constitution.
You don't know what British values are. My family helped to
that-
build this country. My family has
that's
been here for
irrelevant.
1,000 years.
This is
We
personalization.
know
That's
the
not-
values. We
Just-
know.
just
I
because
know
you're
the
here.
values of this country.
I don't know
The
more.
values of this country are Christian.
That's not true.
That is true.
That is not true.
That is true. Just because the Liberals changed it less than 100
that means
years
that
ago.
the majority
Less than
agree on
100
this.
years ago.
That means that the majority of most people who live in this country agree more with me than with you.
Agreed, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
So-
and that's
so
exactly
I
why
have more I
and
have
that's
more of a
exactly
British value
why and that's exactly why liberal secularism fails, because just as liberal secularism allowed this country to go from Christian to non-Christian, it will also allow it to go from non-Christian to Islamist.
That will not
So
happen.
you are bringing,
That will not
yes
happen.
it will, and it is, go to Bradford,
That will not
go to Tower Hamlets,
This is far from-
go to Preston, go up to Lancashire, go up and see the mill towns,
That if
go
that were
up
true,
and
that would be
see.
dangerous, but it's not true.
It is true. It's happening already. You're ignorant.
It's not true.
Go on, sir.
What Christian values allow the
Deporting people.
What
Oh,
Christian
don't ban-
values allow the expulsion of Jews from Jerusalem?
Well, I would say that was a failure of Christian values. I would say that was a failure of Christian values.
so-
Because the reason why those Jews were kicked out, I think it was Richard II, wasn't it, that kicked him out, or Richard III? He did it because he was broke and he needed money. So he was motivated by greed. The Jews had money and they were an easy scapegoat, and to seize their money, he said they were personas non grata. So if you understood Christian values, you would know that being motivated by greed ain't a Christian value.
Yeah.
So what allowed the Jews to be expelled was a failure to be Christian.
So historically, are you able to show a true Christian society which existed at a time in history?
Yeah, I mean, generally, if you look at the pre-Enlightenment Europe, you could say that these were Christian societies. Obviously, they have their blips, like the one you've pointed out,
Yeah.
but on the whole, they were Christian.
When they were in the Dark Ages?
What, sorry?
When they were in the Dark Ages.
Well, the Dark Ages is an emotive term, but yes, they were Christian in what we call the Dark Ages as well.
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah, right? But the thing is, those societies are often misrepresented historically.
Yeah.
Like this guy didn't even know about the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
He thought we were run by tyrants.
I never said I don't know about the Magna Carta.
Brother, you blatantly said we were run by tyrants in the medieval period, and I had to point out to you about the Magna
It was a
Carta.
process of progression.
Brother, you said that when we were Christian, we were run by tyrants, and I had to point out to you the Magna Carta.
It had to happen progressively.
It happened because of
slowly,
Christianity.
slowly. Not because of Christianity.
Yes, because of Christianity. What inspired the peasants' revolt?
Would be the idea.
What
The idea
inspired?
that
Why did they think that they could campaign against the king? Why?
I would argue that because of the ideas of John Locke.
John Locke was centuries after Magna Carta.
16th.
Bro, you've just demonstrated you don't know our history. Magna Carta was in the 12th, 13th century, 1200 to 1300. John Locke was in the 1600 to 1700. They're centuries apart. Brother, I am not against you. All I am saying is that if you want to come here, you should adopt our values. Not liberal values.
I demonstrated that I am more in alignment with the majority of the people in this country than you are.
Most of the people in this country have abandoned British values.
Following what I said, we can agree historically it was only the abandonment of Christian values in this country which made this country advance. You know,
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
It was the abandonment of Christian values, in this country, which brought this country out of the Dark Ages, right?
No,
that's
the
what
Dark
I agree
Ages,
on.
again, you don't know the history. The Dark Ages ended around the year 800 AD.
Yeah.
So the Dark Ages was from the 4th century,
Yeah.
so around the collapse of Rome, 410 AD, and it ended in the year 800 with the beginning of the early medieval period. And then you went early medieval period, high medieval period, late medieval period, Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment, right? So it wasn't the Enlightenment that took us out of the Dark Ages, it was Christendom that took us out of the Dark Ages. It was the establishment of the new Holy Roman Empire with Charlemagne, by the Pope, making him the emperor, that put us on the trajectory of coming out of the Dark Ages. The other thing I'd point out is the Dark Ages weren't dark. They were incredibly civilized, incredibly intelligent, incredibly sophisticated. They were labeled the Dark Ages because of this fetish about the Roman Empire, right? It was a Christian term that then gets adopted by the Enlightenment and applied broadly, like this guy's just done, to the entire period from 410 to 1700. And that's the mistake that you're making, is what he made.
You think the Dark Ages were
Yeah, go on.
intelligent ages?
What's your name, bro?
You know what they used to
Kinu.
Big fan. I watch it all the time.
We'll be right back.